Most women fear being alone, not because they cannot bear the silence, but because, in the stillness, they might finally hear their own soul speak. But there are women who do live alone, not temporarily, not tragically, but deliberately, unapologetically. They are not waiting for someone to fill the empty chair at the dinner table. They are not wondering when their other half will arrive. These are the women who have peeled away the fairy tales, sliced through cultural conditioning, and walked through the fire of self-confrontation. They have seen the shadow in the mirror, and did not look away. Women who live alone without a man do not simply occupy space, they claim it. You've seen her. The woman who moves through the world with a presence that startles serene, alert, untouched by the noise of validation. She might have once bent herself to fit the mold of someone's fantasy, but not anymore. Now, she answers only to something deeper. She has stopped performing femininity as a currency and started embodying it as a truth. Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For this woman, solitude is not exile, it is initiation. She did not retreat from the world because she couldn't handle it. She retreated because the world tried to sell her fragments of herself at the cost of her wholeness. And when a woman refuses to be fragmented, when she chooses wholeness over companionship, the world stares in confusion. Because the world has not been taught what a whole woman looks like. She is not defined by absence. Her life is not a waiting room. In fact, her aloneness is crowded with thoughts, with visions, with conversations that take place in sacred internal realms. She does not shrink from the silence. She steps into it like a queen entering her court. Her solitude is not loneliness, is sovereignty. And yet, you might wonder, how does she do it? Doesn't she miss the warmth of a body beside her, the laughter echoing through shared spaces? Of course she does. But she has traded fleeting warmth for enduring fire. She has chosen the furnace of inner work over the flicker of borrowed comfort, because she knows that what is not rooted in truth will eventually burn her down. This woman has faced the terrifying mirror of ego. She has seen her projections, her desperate attempts to be chosen, loved, protected. She has wept for the girl who thought she had to earn affection by becoming small, by being agreeable, by never asking for too much. And in that weeping, something sacred was born. The seed of individuation. She no longer searches for a man to complete her. Not because she doesn't believe in love, but because she understands that to seek completion in another is to declare herself unfinished. And she is not unfinished. She is ever becoming. There is nothing passive about a woman who chooses to live alone. It is not a failure of romance, it is the triumph of awakening. To live without a man in a society that trains women to anchor their identity to male desire is an act of rebellion so subtle and profound it shakes the unconscious. Of everyone who witnesses it, you may not be ready to be her. You may still feel the pull of validation, the ache to be held, the fear of being too much or not enough. But deep down, some part of you recognizes her. Some part of you remembers. Because every woman has this seed within her, knowing that she was not made to orbit another's life, but to stand at the center of her own. When she stops asking, "Am I lovable?" and starts asking, "Is this aligned with my truth?" the axis tilts. The world around her shifts. The woman who lives alone has not rejected love. She has redefined it. She no longer measures it in declarations or gestures or promises. She measures it in presence, in resonance, in the depth of stillness shared. She knows that real connection cannot be negotiated through need, but invited through wholeness. There is something unsettling about her to those who have never dared be alone. They project onto her coldness, bitterness, arrogance, but what they really see is the reflection of their own disowned power. For the woman who lives without a man holds up a mirror, and in that mirror is a question that demands an answer. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one is choosing you? She has answered, and that is why she is free. Freedom, for her, is not the absence of longing, is the refusal to be enslaved by it. This woman has known desire, not the passive yearning of romantic daydreams, but the raw, visceral hunger to be understood, to be seen beneath the armor, to be mirrored without distortion. And she has learned, again and again, that to offer that longing to the wrong hands is to wound herself deeper than silence ever could. So she chose the silence, not out of fear, but out of clarity, out of the deep, solitude recognition that the wrong love, however tender, however intoxicating, is still a betrayal if it requires her to abandon herself. She no longer performs availability. She is not the siren at the shore, singing for ships to notice her. She is the mountain beyond the seas, still, unmoved, ancient. Those who wish to reach her must climb, must prove not their charm but their substance, because she is done entertaining half-built men who crave her light but fear her depth, and in her stillness she began to hear the archetypes within her awaken. The maiden she once was, naive, aching for approval, now rests quietly in memory. The mother, no longer merely biological but symbolic, rose to nurture herself, to offer care not as currency but as ritual. The sorceress, once exiled for her intuition, now stands boldly in the kitchen. In the mirror, in the dreams, she journals at midnight, and the crone, the wise one within, whispers truths only solitude can uncover. You are enough. You have always been enough. Stop seeking what you already are. This woman has walked the terrain of her own psyche. She has wrestled with the animus, the masculine presence within her, once projected onto lovers, now integrated through conscious work. She no longer needs a man to rescue her from chaos, for she has become the structure that holds her own storm. In Jungian terms, she has withdrawn her projections. The prince she once sought in others now lives in her own strength, her own discipline, her own sovereign will. She doesn't wait for someone to open the door, she builds the house, unlocks the gates, and guards the thresholds of her mind with the clarity of a woman who has nothing left to prove. And yet, she is not hardened. This is no story of bitterness, masked as strength. She has not closed her heart, she has simply raised its frequency. The kind of love she once begged for now must match the sacred peace she's found in her own skin. Anything less sounds like noise, what most call independence. She knows as wholeness. But make no mistake, wholeness is not neat. It is not the curated perfection seen on glowing screens. It is messy, bloody. It is nights of sobbing without reason, mornings of doubt, afternoons of joy so sudden it feels suspicious. She has made peace with this chaos, because to be whole is not to be flawless, is to be fully alive. You may wonder if she's lonely. The answer is more complex than comfort allows. Yes, there are nights the air feels colder when she misses the weight of another heartbeat beside her. But in those moments, she does not spiral, she breathes. She draws warmth from the fire within. She writes, she dreams, she weaves herself back together, thread by sacred thread, because she is no longer seduced by the illusion that a man will save her from solitude. She knows now, solitude is not the dragon, it is the gate. Only those who can walk through their own silence can. reach her, you may envy her, you may fear becoming her, or perhaps you already are her, secretly, beneath the layers of roles you've accepted. But something in you knows this is not a lonely woman. This is a woman reclaimed. She is no longer asking for space. She is the space. There is a stillness in her presence that unsettles those who have never been quiet with themselves. People often try to name her spinster, ice queen, career woman, too picky, too independent, as if her refusal to settle were a pathology, as if the only acceptable female ambition were to be chosen. But this woman has already chosen herself, and that choice has cost her dearly. It always does. The price of self-possession is the grief of detaching from every version of you that once clung to someone else for meaning. She has faced exile not from society, but from the version of femininity society worships. The soft girl who waits, the cool girl who bends, the good girl who obeys. She buried them all in a silent funeral under the light of her becoming. And from that grave, a woman rose who no longer fears being misunderstood, because she understands herself. She has seen how the world praises a woman who gives and crucifies the one who keeps something for herself. She has been called selfish for saying no, arrogant for walking away, cold for choosing solitude over mediocre company. But these are the screams of a world still addicted to its own projections. A world terrified of a woman who doesn't flinch when alone. This woman has done the work, shadow work, the kind no one applauds you for, the kind where you meet the parts of yourself you were taught to repress, the rage, the hunger, the envy, the erotic wildness. She didn't run. She sat with her darkness. She let it speak. She let it cry. She let it breathe. And in that sacred confrontation, she stopped performing. She stopped smiling when her soul was breaking. She stopped apologizing for her intuition. She stopped tolerating crumbs and calling it connection. Because she knew every time she betrayed herself to make someone stay, she was abandoning the very essence she was born to protect. Now, she walks differently. Not faster, not louder, but heavier, as if gravity itself recognizes her as a force. Her eyes do not seek approval. They scan for resonance. Her energy does not reach it, receives. And her time, once given freely, is now guarded like a temple. You can feel it when she enters a room, the invisible perimeter of her boundaries. Not walls, not defense, just sacred parameters carved from years of self-abandonment she vowed never to repeat. And yes, sometimes the old ache returns. The memory of being held, the soft ache of lips on the back of her shoulder, the way silence once curled between two bodies like a secret language. But she no longer chases that memory. She honors it, smiles, and returns home to herself. Because this is what she's learned. The absence of a man does not equal the absence of love. She has found love in the steam of morning tea, in the sound of pages turning, in the stillness between songs. She has found it in her friendships, in the women who mirror her growth, in the long walks when no one is watching. And most of all, she has found it in the echo of her own voice, saying, "You are safe here. You are enough here." She is not trying to be intimidating. That's a projection. She is simply unwilling to shrink. And for those still trapped in the illusion that a woman is only powerful when pleasing, she will always be too much. But for those who have tasted the bitter freedom of waking up not to a lover, but to your own life, she is not too much. She is a map that leads inward. A reminder that you do not need to be completed, that your wholeness was never lost, only hidden beneath layers of performance, pain, and the seduction of being chosen over being known, and now she is known to herself, and that is enough. She no longer waits at the edge of someone else's desire. Desire for her now is sacred, not a manipulation, not a performance, not a desperate clinging masked as romance. It is a current quiet, fierce, unmistakable, flows when two sovereign beings meet in full presence, and until that current is true, she will wait, not with bitterness, not with impatience, but with reverence. She remembers the days when attention felt like oxygen, when the ping of a message or the glance across a room could lift her for hours. But that woman is gone now. The one who mistook breadcrumbs for a feast. The one who danced for crumbs because no one ever told her she was worthy of the table. Now she builds the table, alone if she must. She sets the plates, lights the candles, pours the wine not for a guest, but for the goddess she meets in the mirror each morning. The one who has walked through fire and emerged without asking for applause. This woman is not impressed by charm. She's seen it all: smiles that hide fear, promises made in passing eyes that wander even when they seem fixed on her. She no longer confuses being desired with being valued. Desire can be careless, fleeting. It can come from a wound. But value that is rare, that is cultivated in the quiet, in the depths, in the courage to stay when the masks fall away. And so she lives unrushed, unchased, untamed. She creates not for validation, but for expression. She rests not because she's earned it, but because rest is her birthright. She dreams not of weddings or white dresses, but of truth, of building a life that holds her fully, with or without another. This is not loneliness, it is liberation. But liberation is not light, it is weight. It is the heavy responsibility of choosing yourself every day, especially when the world tells you it would be easier, safer to belong to someone else. She has turned down easier. She has chosen peace over performance, depth over distraction, purpose over pleasing. Sometimes she cries. Of course she does. Not for what she lacks, but for the world that still doesn't know how to hold a woman like her. For the centuries of stories written to convince her that she is broken if she is not claimed. For the voices of ancestors echoing in her bones, whispering, be small, be pleasing, be soft. She hears them, she honors them. Then she silences them with her living. She is the interruption in the ancestral pattern. She is not angry. She is awake. The Stoics spoke of ataraxia, tranquility untouched by fortune or failure. This woman knows it. She does not cling to happiness, for she understands it comes and goes. What she clings to, if anything, is clarity, to the deep knowing of what is hers and what is not, of what feels like truth in her body, of what no longer fits, and she will not shrink to fit again. Her life is a ritual now. The morning sun through linen curtains, the scent of cedarwood, the way she waters her plants like prayers. Every gesture is sacred, because she has made it so, not to impress, not to be seen, but because this is what happens when a woman lives for herself, and still there is space in her life, space for love, real love, not the kind that arrives with conditions or apologies or masks, but the kind that holds, witnesses, deepens. She is not afraid of it. She simply refuses to chase it, because she knows what is meant for her will feel like still water, not like hunger. She is not against men. She is simply for herself, and perhaps, one day, a man will enter not to complete her, but to walk beside her, a man who has also faced his shadow, who has stopped projecting his mother onto his lovers, who does not fear a woman's mind, her magic, or her silence. A man who knows that partnership is not ownership, but devotion. But until then, and even then, she is home, in her skin, in her breath, in her solitude. She has learned to tell the difference between solitude and starvation. In her past, she mistook connection for nourishment even when it drained her, even when it left her fragmented. She stayed in conversations that echoed with emptiness. She lingered in arms that held her body, but not her truth. She smiled through discomfort. She laughed when she wanted to scream. She betrayed her own instincts to avoid the ache of abandonment. But the ache came anyway. And so, eventually, she stopped bargaining with it. There was a moment of quiet breaking when she sat alone on the floor of a dim room, surrounded not by people, but by ghosts. Ghosts of who she had tried to be. Ghosts of the promises she made. To stay small, to be loved. And in that silence, she didn't reach for distraction. She didn't text an old lover. She didn't scroll for comfort. She simply stayed. And in that stillness, she met herself. The woman beneath the performance. The fire beneath the smile. The storm that had been waiting to be seen. That was the beginning. The woman who lives alone, without a man, is not simply living without partnership. She is living without permission. She no longer asks for validation to breathe fully, to speak loudly, to want deeply. Her existence is no longer filtered through the lens of desirability. She is not trying to be desirable. She is trying to be. Real. This is why she cannot be easily captured. Not by labels, not by roles, not even by the men who still seek to possess rather than partner. Because she is not an idea, they cannot mold her. She is not a reaction, they cannot provoke her. She is not a rescue story, they cannot save her. And they find this disarming. Men who are used to being needed often mistake her wholeness for rejection. But it is not rejection, it is refinement. She does not reject love, she rejects dependency masquerading as romance. She does not reject connections, she rejects enmeshment disguised as closeness. She does not reject men, she rejects the half-alive, the half-earnest, the half-present. She wants depth, and she offers the same. That is why her presence feels like silence and thunder all at once. She brings peace, but she will not let you sleepwalk. She listens with her eyes. She touches with her truth. She will see you, not the mask, not the charm, but you aren't. If you are not ready for that, she will leave. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because she has been through too much to betray herself again. Her body remembers the times she stayed. Too long, the weight of unsaid words, the tightness of smiling through 1,000 tiny deaths. And her sullen ancient relentless has no interest in reliving that cycle. You may wonder, does she miss being loved? But what she missed more, what nearly killed her, was being unloved while pretending otherwise. She has since become her own witness, her own warmth, her own mirror. That doesn't mean she has no room left. It means anyone who enters must come whole, willing to become whole. They must understand that love is not the merging of two wounded parts, but the dance of two sovereign souls. She will not carry someone who cannot walk their own shadow. She will not soothe the man who weaponizes his confusion. She will not mother a partner and call it romance. She is not looking for a project. She is looking for presence. And until she finds it, she ever does, she will continue to grow, to write, to heal, to create rituals that honor her aliveness. She will continue to walk by herself, not as a punishment, but as a pilgrimage. For hers is not the path of the many, hers is the path of the woman who refused to settle in the quietest hours of her life, when the world sleeps and even memory softens its grip. She feels that the power she once gave away slowly returning home. It doesn't arrive in grand gestures or fireworks. It arrives like breath, subtle, certain. It arrives in the way she says no without guilt. In the way she no longer explains her choices. In the way her joy no longer depends on someone else's presence, attention, or permission. She has become the thing she used to chase. Love, for her now, is not a transaction. It is not something to be earned through sacrifice or submission. It is not a performance or a prize. It is a frequency of resonance between those who have done the work to meet themselves. She does not want the fairy tale. She wants the truth. She wants the silence between words to be safe. She wants the gaze that doesn't try to fix her. She wants the love that sees her not just when she's soft, but when she's strong. Not just when she's giving, but when she's resting. Not just when she's blooming, but when she's rebuilding from ashes. But if it never comes, she will not crumble, because she has become the great love of her life. That doesn't mean she's closed. It means she's awake. Wide awake to the games, the masks, the half-fours wrapped in charm. She is no longer afraid to walk away from almost loyal, almost present, almost love, almost broke her. She has learned the cost of compromising her soul, of saying yes when everything in her body whispered no, of bending just enough to be chosen, only to lose herself in the choosing. Now she is chosen daily by herself, in every boundary she keeps, in every truth she tells, in every moment she chooses peace over pleasing. This is not a hardened woman. This is a healed one. She cries, yes, she grieves, she longs, she hopes, but her emotions are no longer cages. They are currents. She feels them fully and lets them pass. She does not numb. She does not run. She knows now that wholeness isn't perfection, it's presence. She is present to her needs, to her shadows, to her pleasure, to her pain, and it terrifies those who have only known women as caretakers, performers, pleasers. She no longer fits the script. She is no longer available for roles that require her to abandon herself. She is not a savior, a muse, or a mirror for someone else's ego. She is not here to fix or to be fixed. She is not waiting for a story to complete her. She is the story, and what a story it is of ruin and rebirth, of silence and song, of unraveling and rising. It is not a story that ends in marriage or motherhood unless she chooses it. It is a story that ends in truth, in freedom, in a home, within her own skin. This is the woman who lives alone, without a man, not in bitterness, not in exile, but in devotion. Devotion to a life that reflects her essence. Devotion to a love that begins and ends with self. Devotion to the unfolding mystery of her own becoming. She is not unreachable. She is rare, and rarity is not meant to be hunted. It is meant to be honored. She walks now not with the desperation of one seeking love, but with the calm of one who is love. The world may not understand her. They will call her intimidating, distant, cold. But those who see clearly will know, this is a woman who has faced the void and chosen to fill it with her own light. This is a woman who does not fear solitude, because she has become sacred company. She is the woman who, even in the silence of her apartment, even in the absence of footsteps beside her, walks with her head high, her soul rooted, and her spirit unshaken. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.